Every 17th of August, millions of Indonesians stand in silence as the red and white flag is raised. For most, it's a celebration, a day of games, parades, and fireworks. But behind the tradition lies a story of war, politics, and courage. In 1945, Indonesia declared independence in the middle of chaos, while the world's most destructive war was still fresh, and powerful nations were deciding the fate of Asia. Today, let's dive deep into the events that shaped modern Indonesia and find out exactly how Indonesia won its freedom in 1945. To understand 1945, we need to go back, way back, for over 300 years. Nusantara were under colonial rule mostly by the Dutch. The Netherlands controlled trade, politics, and resources, especially spices, which were more valuable than gold in Europe. But Indonesians never stopped resisting. In the 19th century, leaders like Prince Diponegoro in Java, Patimura in Maluku, and Cut Nyak Dien in Aceh fought wars against Dutch domination. These uprisings were brutally crushed, but they kept the idea of independence alive. By the early 20th century, a new kind of struggle was emerging. Nationalist movements like Budi Utomo, Sarekat Islam, and later the Indonesian National Party used education, newspapers, and speeches to unite people under a shared identity, Indonesia. It was this mix of armed resistance and national awakening that laid groundwork for what would happen in 1945. In early 1942, during World War II, everything changed. Japan invaded Southeast Asia, defeating the Dutch colonial army in just weeks. Cities like Batavia, now Jakarta, fell quickly. At first, some Indonesians welcomed the Japanese. They promised Asia for Asians and an end to European rule. But those promises didn't last. Life under Japan was harsh. Food was rationed, censorship was strict, and forced labor, called Rumusha, sent hundreds of thousands to work in dangerous conditions, often never to return. Yet, ironically, Japan also gave nationalist leaders more visibility than the Dutch ever had. Sukarno, Mohammad Hatta, and Ki Hajar Dewantara were allowed to speak to mass audiences, organize events, and even lead Japanese-backed organizations. It was a strange mix, oppression on one hand, opportunity on the other, and it planted the seeds for what would come next. By mid-1945, Japan was losing the war. On August 6, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, Nagasaki was hit. On August 15, Japan announced its unconditional surrender to the Allies. This was the moment nationalist leaders had been waiting for. Japan's control in Indonesia was collapsing, and the Dutch were still months away from returning. But there was a catch. The Allies had ordered Japan to maintain order in its occupied territories until Allied forces could arrive. This meant the Japanese army in Indonesia was technically still in charge, and they didn't want Indonesians declaring independence without permission. For Sukarno and Hatta, the window of opportunity was tiny, and it was dangerous. This brings us to one of the most dramatic moments in Indonesian history, the Rengasdengklok Incident. On August 16, 1945, a group of young nationalists, known as Pemuda, feared Sukarno and Hatta would wait too long and risk losing momentum. They believed independence had to be declared immediately, without Japanese involvement, so they took matters into their own hands. They brought Sukarno, Hatta, and Sukarno's wife, Fatmawati, to a small town of Rengasdengklok, about 60 kilometers from Jakarta. There, they pressed the leaders to make the proclamation at once. But Sukarno and Hatta insisted on securing broader support, including from Japanese officials who had worked with them during the occupation. By nightfall, a compromise was reached. They would return to Jakarta and declare independence the next day. On the morning of August 17, 1945, at Sukarno's home on Jalan Pegangsaan Timur, number 56, history was made. The proclamation of independence was short, just 2 sentences, typed by Sayuti Melik and signed by Sukarno and Mohammad Hatta. At 10 a.m., in front of a small crowd, Sukarno read the words that would change the nation.
Proklamasi. Kami, bangsa Indonesia, dengan ini menyatakan kemerdekaan Indonesia. Hal-hal yang mengenai pemindahan kekuasaan dan lain-lain diselenggarakan dengan cara saksama dan dalam tempo yang sesingkat-singkatnya. Jakarta, 17 Agustus 1945, atas nama bangsa Indonesia, Sukarno, Hatta.
Then a hand-sewn red and white flag made by Fatmawati Sukarno was raised, accompanied by the song Indonesia Raya. It was simple, almost modest, but for those who were there, it was unforgettable. But independence on paper didn't mean independence in reality. Within months, Dutch forces backed by the British returned, determined to reclaim their former colony. The next 4 years became known as the Indonesian's National Revolution, a mix of guerrilla warfare, diplomatic negotiations, and mass resistance. In November 1945, the Battle of Surabaya became a turning point. Thousands of Indonesians fought and died defending their city, showing the world their determination. Leaders like General Sudirman led military campaign despite illness, while diplomats secured crucial international support, especially from newly independent Asian countries and the United Nations. After years of fighting and diplomacy, the struggle paid off. In December 1949, at the Round Table Conference in The Hague, the Netherlands formally recognized Indonesia's sovereignty. The journey that began with 2 sentences in 1945 had finally become reality. Indonesia's independence was not given, it was taken, earned through courage, unity, and sacrifice. And every August 17, when the red and white flag rises, we remember the moment a nation was born. Subscribe, like, comment for more content like this. See ya!